Today we are going to kill our opponents with lands. Raven of the Fell Omens, a Pauper card from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, has sparked a lot of excitement due to its perfect synergy with burn spells like Lightning Bolt or Bump in the Night. But today I'll be showcasing a deck that takes a unique approach to victory. It is centered around lands like Lush Oasis, Festering Gulch and Sword Springs, which synergize exceptionally well with our Aving Companion. We'll use cards such as Arboreal Grazer, Explore and Growth Spiral to ramp up our land count and deal significant damage. Of course, we can't forget about the powerhouse combo of Ghostly Flicker, Archemancer and Mold Drifter, which is essential for our strategy. Join me as we delve into this quirky and entertaining deck, offering an entirely new way to take down your opponent. Our first match is against Dimir Terror, a popular meta deck that aims to cheat big creatures into play by milling themselves. Our first turns are all about setting up and ramping ahead with cards like Growth Spiral, Explore and Eureka Moment. While our opponent plays a Preordain and passes, we cast a Mold Drifter to draw more cards, ping them for 1 with a land, and pass. Our opponent recklessly taps out by casting cantrips, so we take the opportunity to play our mighty Raven of Fell Omens and deal 2 more damage with the help of another land. However, our opponent kills our bird and passes the turn. With 6 mana available, we play our desert and cast the Dance of the Tumbleweeds to deal another point of damage. More importantly, we create a 7/7, which we expect will die to a Snuff Out. The opponent plays a Brainstorm at the end and mills 2 cards with Thought Scour. They then use a Preordain, cycle a Lorien Revealed, and finally play their first creature, a Gurmag Angler. We untap, and surprisingly the token did not die, so we proceeded to play our Raven. Post-combat, we use a Eureka Moment to find another desert, and deal 2 more damage to our opponent, putting them down to 5, despite having attacked only once in this game. They then untap, draw a card with Frantic Inventory, and kill our boar. Of course, they also attacked, and I decided to take the damage this time. I decide to attack back on my turn, and post-combat, I use an Eureka Moment to draw a card, but it meets a counter. Because of this, I play the Archaeomancer to return it, and then play an Arboreal Grazer as a much-needed blocker. This figure kills the bird, and things get complicated as my opponent uses Unexpected Fangs on their big creature, giving it lifelink. On top of that, they also play 2 other creatures, threatening lethal next turn. Desperately, I take a Ghostly Flicker with my Mystical Teachings, hoping they don't have removal for my wizard. They untap, playing an Archaeologist that reveals some cards, among them a Lorien Reveal. Then, they use Brainstorm to dig further into their library and attack. I block, now blinking both creatures to hopefully prevent them from gaining life, but a Snuff Out kills the wizard. The good news is that at least the Grazer survives, but more importantly, it puts them to 5 by retriggering its ability, which puts a desert into play. After that, a serpent joins the party and they pass. I play a desert, putting them to 4, and my only hope now is to use the teaching to find a moment's peace and hope they don't draw a counter. The opponent then attacks, and I go for my plan, successfully preventing the damage for this turn. We know about the Lorien Reveal, and the opponent finds another serpent before passing back. I use Eureka Moment to draw 2 more cards, and a Mold Drifter does the same at the cost of its evoke. We play the Mire to put our Archaeomancer on top, to use the Ghostly Flicker and attempt to kill next turn. At their upkeep, we use the flashback cost on Moment's Peace to prevent the damage once more. We untap after they skip combat, use our Mancer to return the Flicker to our hand, but it meets removal nevertheless. Still, now I can search for another desert, and put my opponent down to 2 thanks to the Raven's ability, eventually attacking, bringing them down to 1. Now, we just blink both desert lands, and that's how we win game number 1. For game number 2, the Boyuka Bog in our sideboard will help us a lot to slow them down while we ramp, and this hand is very good at it, so we keep. We ping them for 1, and they find a removal thanks to their Archaeologist for later. Since I have a Growth Spiral on hand, I decide to play my Bog to exile their graveyard and ramp myself further by casting the Growth Spiral and putting the bounce land that returns the Bog to my hand to exile the graveyard once more. At the end of my turn though, they use a Mental Note and a Lorien Reveal to fill the graveyard, which seems like the perfect opportunity to use a second Growth Spiral and exile their graveyard at instant speed to slow them down even further. To this, all the opponent can do is play a land, a cantrip, and pass their turn. I untap and try to fetch a Dispel with my Mystical Teachings, to resolve my Mold Drifter and draw more cards. The Drifter resolves, but I miss my land drops, so I just pass this time. They untap and cast a Lorien Revealed, drawing 3 more cards. At the end of their turn, I return the Drifter to my hand with the Pulse of Murasa, and decide to cast it for its full value to create some board presence. I meant to play the Raven first and the land second, but mistakes were made. Regardless, it gets killed. They untap, and big creatures start to fill the board, with the small advantage that now the opponent is tapped out. Since I found a bounce land, I played it and returned my Boyuka Bog to hand, putting it into play immediately with Eureka Moment to exile my opponent's graveyard once more. Also, since I'm greedy and want to be mana efficient, I decide to play the Archaeomancer, return the Pulse of Murasa, and attack for 2 in the air, putting them down to 15. They then attack for 10, and I chump block one of the Serpents, going down to 21, and they pass the turn. I use the dance to get another land and put them down to 14. Then I return my Boyuka Bog and attack in the air. On their turn, they kill my boar and attack with both creatures, so I prevent the damage with a Moment's Peace. Not playing anything means they have more creatures in hand, so I keep attacking and playing my lands. At the end of their turn, the opponent uses a Fangs on one of their creatures, and I use this opportunity to grab a Ghostly Flicker and immediately cast it to target my Drifter and my Mancer. They try to counter it, but I use mine, and realizing this, the opponent scoops the match. We play against my newest version of Golgari Gardens for our second match, which is a total joy to play with if you haven't seen it yet. We both start with somewhat slow hands, but I will show why the Raven of the Fell Omens is a powerhouse in this game. After the initial setup from both, I put them down to 16 just by playing lands and my bird. They attack, and I block one of their creatures, taking only 1 damage. Post-combat, they play 2 more creatures and pass. Now that the Raven can attack, I start dealing 3 damage per turn with the help of a desert. A few interactions pass, and I deal more damage to them on their turn by casting Eureka Moment and putting deserts onto the field, putting them down to 5. A Glimmer Bear may mean bad news for us, but luckily we have 2 copies of Weather the Storm on hand and a Moment's Peace that can buy us more time. As usual, I attack with my bird, return a land to my hand with the Chamber, and replay it to put them down to 2, and then to 1 with the dance. I could have created a big creature with it, but decided that keeping mana up is better in case they want to go off with their Glimmer Bairn. At 1 life, any land is lethal, so despite losing my bird, I will return my land to hand and hope to kill them next turn. They attack once more, and I top deck a Raven for the turn. This means I can play it and play the Spring so the bird's ability triggers. Since the opponent can't respond to this ability in time, killing the bird won't stop its ability from resolving. The only option for them to survive is by finding multiple Reckoner's Bargains and start sacrificing their creatures. After drawing a lot of cards in a row, they eventually fail to find the card and we win game number 1. Game number 2 will go in a totally different way. Up until now, I've been relying on the lands and the bird to win games, but there is a strong synergy hidden in the deck still, and you will see which in a second. For now, I add a couple of Arms of Hadar and call it a day. Meanwhile, my opponent is setting up to add more board presence, and I focus on playing as many lands as I can by playing Growth Spiral and using my dual lands to bounce my deserts. I play a land and put another bounce land with the Grazer's ability, which gets killed due to its Grave Sin. The opponent then attacks, creates a token, and passes. Since I have enough mana, I decide that playing a Muldrifter for its full value is worth it. So I do that and pass. Of course, our creature gets killed, and we get attacked for the turn, and a threatening Glimmer Bairn joins the party. I use Explore to put 2 lands onto the field this turn, and an Archaeomancer returns a Spiral to my hand. If I am not careful, I can easily get killed by a Glimmer Bairn if the opponent can create enough tokens for it. They attack, and I block a token, so the opponent uses it to pump the Bairn, and deals just 3 damage for now while exiling my graveyard before passing. A Murmuring Mystic is a great draw, and remember when I said there was a secret win condition in the deck? Well, this is what I call Plan B. Now, it's just a matter of protecting it to take over the game and hopefully win from there. The opponent draws 2 cards at the end of the turn, plays a Nadir's Nightblade, and attacks. I block some of the creatures and they sacrifice 1 in response, so now they can use Tragic Sleep to kill my Mystic. Luckily, I have a Ghostly Flicker that will fizzle their spell and save my creature while creating a bird token. Now, this is where the fun part begins, at least for us. I play the Raven we just drew along with a land to deal 2 damage to them. We attack, and post-combat, a Growth Spiral reveals an Arms of Hadar, which may not seem like much, but it will at least kill the token creatures, making the Bairn less threatening. Back on my opponent's turn, they decide to attack, and I forget to block, but luckily I am not punished for it. Post-combat, they play a creature and flip their blade. I use a Growth Spiral and find a desert, putting it onto the field and pinging them for 2 more damage on their turn. Back on mine, I attack with the Flock and use my Ghostly Flicker on my Mancer and a Desert to deal with some extra damage while they are tapped out, which incidentally creates some more flyers. After realizing what's up, the opponent scoops. While this deck can be somewhat slow, it is perfect against some matches that are otherwise hard if you rely on creature attacking, such as Turbo Fog. We start strong by dealing damage on turn 1. On turn 2, a bird starts dealing lightning bolt damage as soon as it can attack, putting them down to 14 on turn 3. On theirs, I deal 2 extra damage with the help of a Growth Spiral and the opponent scoops. Post sideboard, I added a Dispel and some lands since all my anti-creature packages are dead. Like in the last game, I played a Raven on turn 2 to start pressuring them early. A few turns pass and I chain multiple Growth Spirals to play many more lands that can deal damage to them, putting them to 13. The opponent starts milling me and eventually gains a bunch of life with Weather the Storm. This may not matter as much if they misread my deck and decide to side out their Moment's Peace. Now, I can add a second Raven to the board, but more importantly, create a 7/7 that can start dealing massive damage each turn. The opponent then plays an enchantment that mills me twice each turn, and passes. I attack, putting them down to 13 and then to 10 by playing a land with both birds in play. A Muldrifter joins the party, and I pass the turn. The opponent plays a Preordain and passes, and at the end of their turn, I use a Growth Spiral to deal 3 more damage with a Desert. I untap and attack, but they prevent the combat damage for now. I use a Dance to deal 3 more damage, putting them down to 4, playing a bounce land, and passing. At the end step, they use Behold the Multiverse to draw 2 more cards and gain 1 more life by playing a land of their own. I use Teachings, but it gets countered, so I happily draw 2 more cards on my turn. Like last time, I play a Desert, putting them down to 2 and attacking. As expected, they prevent the combat damage. I then use Explore, play a bounce land returning a Desert, and when I cast my Grazer, they use Weather the Storm to gain more life. In response, I use my Teachings to fetch a Ghostly Flicker and blink 2 of my lands to finally kill my opponent at instant speed with lands.